7 o'clock, the meeting will come to order. I'm Grace Lesbrance, Cascade Supervisor. Clerk Slater, please call the roll.
Trustee McDonald.
Here.
Trustee Nordhook.
Here.
Treasurer Pierce.
Here.
Trustee Kessel.
Here.
Trustee Shipley.
Here.
Slater here. Supervisor Lesbrance.
Here. Please rise if possible for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is there a motion or discussion for approval of tonight's agenda?
Shipley makes a motion to approve the agenda. Support.
That's a motion by Trustee Shipley, supported by Trustee McDonald to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Article 4, we have no presentations this week. Article 5, public comments. Please limit. Oh, one moment, let me give you that spiel and then the public can comment. Try to please limit comments to 3 minutes. If you're able, come to the podium. Otherwise, Ms. Broad is happy to bring the microphone over to you. And following in-person comments, we'll go virtual. Mr. Merlin.
I'm actually going to try to eliminate some of the things that I was going to say, but I wondered in the financial materials what the word complex now means, because we have complex maintenance that we pay in the general fund. There are a number of things that are labeled complex maintenance, complex electricity, complex phones. Is that relating to a particular degree of difficulty? Some are for only $50. You can't get anything complex done for $50 these days. Or is it location, i.e. the Township Hall or another possible location? So I would ask anybody who knows what the word complex means in our financial statements. Have been appearing for the last couple of months now. Second thing I'd like to mention is something I've mentioned before. I do think the town manager deserves their own department in the accounting books. I constantly get irritated that our supervisor is making over $200,000 a year from Cascade.
I'm irritated that I haven't seen any of that.
Yes, well, and obviously you're not. It's just the town manager has his department slung under yours. I don't know whether this is a reflection of Mr. Swayze's understanding that since he is the chief administrative officer of the township and not the chief executive officer under the statute, he acts in a subordinate role to our supervisor, who is the elected senior official of the township and chairperson of the board of trustees, with the board as a whole ultimately acting in a somewhat cumbersome statutory role as the chief executive of the township, which is particularly cumbersome in Cascade, where our ultimate CEO is of two minds about many, I would suggest too many, items of real importance to our citizens today. The next thing I'd like to talk about are cash balances. It looks as if we have total fund balances of $21,296,483, but only $3.978 million of that is money available for use immediately. The rest is either committed or restricted. Restricted money, for example, is money restricted because of a millage. In most cases, that would stop it from being spent on things that it shouldn't be spent on. It's also money that is set aside for the DDA, for example. So we have a lot of projects or something to which we have $5.2 million committed to particular projects.
Go ahead, just try to.
I will try to finish it up quickly if that's 3 minutes. What I am more concerned about are what the projects underway are and new desired projects that are in planning with that money in the committed and restricted piles of cash. I'd like to ensure that these projects are ones desired by our citizens today, and that is where I hope our new township strategic plan can be very helpful to clean out old suggested projects that don't make sense anymore and put in place those things that our citizens view as priorities today. And second, for those projects currently in active planning or implementation, that there be an accountability measure that they can look at our website anytime and find out where we are on projects in terms of on schedule, on budget, being physically prudent with all our projects. I can think off the top of my head of just the Fire Station 1 rebuild, this Fire Station 2 storage area, the PFAS remediation, and I'd even put the town hall on there since we still seem to be correcting some of the things that didn't get done in the renovation. I would think we'd have one big slide or piece of paper on our website that would name the project in a way the public understands, the next major target, be it final completion or the major stepping stone toward completion. It's not meant to be tactical next steps, but rather something the public can see is getting done, the date by which the target is meant to be achieved, the estimated date for the entire project to be completed if the target date is not the entire project, the costs expected to be incurred for the entire project, and most importantly, the person responsible in the township for oversight of the project, for representing the citizens of the township impacted by the project, for the township as a whole, and for bringing the project in on time and on budget. Having this will create real accountability, increase both transparency and fiscal responsibility, and ensure that the citizens are heard and are represented in matters related to the project. If at any time a determination is made by the responsible person that the time or budget targets will not be met, then he should have a duty to report that to the town manager and to the supervisor, and in turn to the full board to get them to change those targets on our website. This person must have project management experience, including in particular cross-functional management experience, both internally and externally, must be able to define the critical path to achieve completion where the likely choke points might occur that could cause significant delays, if not thought about in advance and planned for, and great communication skills to keep all the players involved, including citizens, aware of what is being done. Someone used to taking both responsibility and having accountability for getting things done. There are many such persons in private industry, but so far I found very few in public employment. Do we have even one of those people in Cascade?
Mr. Merlin. It's me back here. I just wanted to remind you that the time is up.
I know,
Okay.
just trying to figure out where that voice came from.
Making the staff do the dirty work.
We should not, and I'm just bringing it to an end. We should not find out in August that a project expected to be completed in July, based on statements made not even a year earlier, has not yet started and will now cost approximately $75 more than expected. If the board institutes having a place on its website where such a chart is placed, easily found by the public, I suspect there'll be fewer surprises and more accountability built into the system. And we should not end up with a progressive being our representative on a project overseeing their own subsidiary and doing the project, where there are no penalties for missing deadlines or cost parameters.
Thank you, Mr. Merlin.
And that's it.
Any other people wishing to speak? Let's try to keep it to,
I don't need 6 minutes.
Let's-
We have 2 minutes or 6 minutes.
Well, could they come
how
up?
about 4?
We have a lot to say.
She does.
Hey, do you mind speaking really clearly into the mic? I take the minutes and give me your name and address.
Sure.
Okay, my name
Thanks.
is Mary Vanderveen. I live at 7550 Alaska Ridge.
And my name is Molly Miller and I live at 1490 Briarcliff.
Okay, and what I wanted to address was some of the discussions about the 2020 election at the last board meeting. It is my understanding that Jack Lewis was supposedly actively involved in the 2020 election. And being a family friend, I know that he was severely compromised
Mhm.
during that time. He had Alzheimer's and he was unwell.
Both of us, Jack is family friends and has been since
Since we
little
grew up with
girls.
their kids, yeah.
So that's
Go
why
ahead.
we're up here together, because we believe that to have Jack even on the board of any election integrity with the trustees, as a trustee or a planning commission is corrupt. And I'm absolutely shocked that you would have somebody that was compromised on your committees, especially during an election
It was so
that we had
important.
in 2020. And so what we were trying to figure out is with Mrs. Slater, how exactly was this 2020 election run? As Jack was part of the trustee, and he wasn't there. He passed away November 24th of 2020 and was bedridden, and that's
Yes.
kind of taking advantage of a situation. We need to know who was there to tabulate the results of the election on that night. And we need to know if it was lawfully done. Otherwise, we need an audit. This is ridiculous if you did not do it legally. And it comes right down to what's happening in the United States right now, and it's happening right here in our small community. And it's shocking, absolutely shocking. So unless we get some answers, we need an audit of the whole Cascade and everything. It's disgusting to me. And then to hear that you actually elected Mr. McDonald on the next voter election that's coming up, who has already been compromised. And the state of Michigan has looked into Mr. McDonald for fraudulent activity during his election and got a slap on the wrist, which is ridiculous. Most people would have been in so much more trouble. And here you sit as a trustee to all of us and helping us, but now you've been promoted to a position where our next election could be compromised again. And we're very concerned about it. The whole community is concerned about it.
I didn't realize you were asking for 6 minutes for both of you. Sorry, go ahead.
But that, I mean, that is where we stand and we're very concerned. We've listened to the meetings and it just seems like things are falling through the slats and things aren't cohesive. We need to know what's going on. This is ridiculous that it's happening right here. And we want to know who was there to figure out our election, the last 2020 election, and who was there to look at and tabulate and make sure that everything was done legally and lawfully and bound so that it could go and the chain of custody. It's like, it's just shocking to me that it could happen in our small community. So, and we need answers because that's the last thing is every time we come up here with a question, we never get answers anyhow. It's like, oh,
exactly.
okay. So we just need answers.
Yeah, we need to have this totally fixed by 2022.
No,
so
we
don't
need
have
to
any-
fix now.
Yeah, we'll get
And
it
so
fixed
if
now.
we need an audit,
Yeah, we want the
of
township. on it.
our little small community, or I would like to see how my vote came out, if
Yeah.
it was true. And I don't know how to go about that. If I just go in and say, I'd like to see, my vote, because I know who I voted for. And if it's not correct, oh my gosh, all hell's gonna break
Yeah.
loose. And that's all I know is no more monkey business, no more, I don't know what's going on, but I've just had it. It's like ridiculous. I can't believe you guys had Jack Lewis on these primary,
These
really
huge
important,
elections.
really important election. And he was a family friend of ours, and it's just disgusting to me. He would take advantage of somebody. It's just disgusting. So thank you for your time.
Do you want me to say something?
Sorry, as far as,
Well, I just know that the election commission doesn't participate.
oh, sorry.
Oh.
She will, board discretion, if you'd like to respond, feel free.
So I don't know if you know how elections work, but the work of the election commission is all done way ahead of time before the election. the election commission approves the precinct inspectors. All of our precinct inspectors, we hired about 70, 80, 90, I don't remember the exact number, who each go through about 4 hours of training put on by the county. So those are the people that are tabulating the ballots on the day of the election. We have observed every aspect of chain of custody. Those are all overseen by trained inspectors. They are checked by members of each party. There's many checks and balances, many steps. And then they're taken to the county and the county verifies. So the election commission does not, other than me as clerk, the election commission does not actually have responsibilities on election day. So as far as Jack Lewis signing off on that, it was well prior to the election that was done before he became so terribly ill. And in the case of Trustee McDonald, as has been said from this platform repeatedly, he made a clerical error, a filing error, which when brought to his attention, he corrected. And it was determined to be correct by the county and by the state of Michigan. So that is done. And I have no problem with him serving. He is not fraudulent. He didn't intend to deceive anyone. So that's that.
I just want to clarify, you're speaking, I don't want to get into this, but you're speaking in your capacity, your opinion as clerk. That is not a board consensus.
Certainly.
I may have another minute. Sue, there was a letter that came out from the state that literally said there were activities that happened with Mr. McDonald that it wasn't done properly. And where the money came from. So you can't sit there and say that things were not done properly during the last election. And you cannot say that to a community because it's not true. So that's not, I mean, and for Jack Lewis to sign off on this, he had Alzheimer's for at least 2 years before the election. So who signed off on it? So you are not telling the truth. You are literally not telling the truth to the whole community.
I'm
And you sit there and you're not telling the truth. And we're sick of it. We're absolutely sick of it. And we're not going to put up with it anymore. It's done. So I don't know what you guys are hiding, but we're going to find it out. And we need to know the truth. And you can say exactly what you just said, but we need the truth.
That is the truth.
Listen.
Any other comments?
Suzanne Ward from Tall Pines Drive. Thank you. I think when there is truth, it's easy to produce evidence of truth. And if somebody has Alzheimer's for 2 years, then they're clearly not fit to oversee any part of an election. I don't care if there's 60 other people, they shouldn't be on that group of 60 or whatever number you said. Number two, if someone has been questioned about their integrity, they should be able to prove that it wasn't a mistake. They shouldn't have been reprimanded by the state. And we should be very clear about it. It should be a very black and white process. And the other thing I have to say is that I would, as a taxpayer who apparently funded a trip to Oregon with Ben Swayze, he said, I would like to know on the website what you learned at the Great Restart. I'm not interested in a great reset, restart, or my taxpayer money going to anything of the kind at all. If anybody's not familiar with the Great Reset, you should really look into it. And our taxpayer money, if you're going to take trips to Oregon for an initiative that I'm sure most of the community doesn't agree with, we would like to know the agenda of the meeting, what you learned at the meeting, and what the benefit was to taxpayers to fund you to go to that meeting. And that's something that should just be very transparent on the website. I keep learning of things, and shame on me that I've just started showing up, but I keep hearing of things that don't make sense to me, of what I'm paying for. And I don't understand. I don't understand why we have somebody with Alzheimer's overseeing election things. I don't understand why you're going to a meeting that has to do with a great global reset without at least sharing the information that you learned. I still haven't heard. I came 3 times last summer to ask where the $41,000 of hand sanitizer that was redirected to the Dominion voting machines went. No one's answered me. And you guys work for us. Every one of you get paid with taxpayer money from we, the people. We need to know where, it's always like we show up, we ask questions, and then we don't get answers. And it's incredibly insulting. So I guess, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
What's her name?
Can I ask?
She didn't give her name. Oh, could you give your name, please, and address for the record?
And the last point, the CARES funds, I got an email today from saying that they expect in mid-December to have that forensic audit. So I think we can all agree the sooner that is wrapped up, the better. And I think that will be publicly presented. Anyone else wishing to comment?
I'm Kate Dozema, 5625 Alaska. And I would love to hear an update on our internet situation out there. I know we've talked about it lots of times, and I personally don't feel like I'm getting any real answers. I am hoping that there's something in the works. And if I could have an update, or we could have an update, that'd be awesome. Thank you.
That we can give you an update on. I just don't like what we have to tell you. We're still pushing with, so Comcast is $200,000 versus their 67. Manager Swayze has more details, but we're still back and forth with them. And then we're kind of in a holding pattern because there may be state funds available for matching, but we haven't heard back at the county level, or sorry, county funds. And then, yeah,
We did also engage the township attorney
Yeah.
to work with Comcast to see if there was anything they could do. They had some experience working with Comcast on previous projects, so I know it wasn't Mike, it was somebody from his office, but I'm not sure where they're at with that.
and we can reach out. That's the one thing we can do immediately is reach back out to them to see what pressure they're able to put on there. But as of right now, the cost is still $200,000, and sorry for the bad news.
And formerly Alaska Ridge, now in Michigan, but what happens here affects all of us. And I can speak to the Alaska Ridge because I was the one that brought that up. So I know you're saying we still have problems with it, but the original problem is that the CARES funds that were literally slated to, that were allowed to be put on the internet was voted down by, under Ben's recommendation, Kessel, Pierce, Slater, and McDonald. You voted that down. So those CARES funds could have totally gone to the Alaska Ridge. So now to say that there's problems with Comcast, no, go back to the root of the problem. It's not Comcast. It is that you unfairly spent our voter funds on Dominion voting systems and other things. So that's that. I think however you guys come up with the money, it was a different price in the beginning. So that's that. And then just to support all of the, it's so, first of all, I just want to say, dear God, please help us. Please help us. And I get, this is so hard because I know we're all children of God. And I know when you're in fear, you do things that you might not be meant to do. But what I see happening in this world, those of you acting from fear and not love are creating so much harm and devastation, and we need to fix it. And you do need to start listening to the people. I know the room hasn't been, so anyway, Sue, you put out a memo on October 27th saying that the election commission is comprised of the clerk and 2 trustees. They have numerous responsibilities in ensuring elections are conducted lawfully.
So I would like to request to be made clear to everyone, we would like to see a list of what, there must be some rules. We'd like to see a list of exactly how elections are to be run lawfully, because we don't know this. You're the clerk. You're saying that's great. We would like to see the list of what the state requires that an election is done lawfully. We would like an audit done. We already asked that as residents. It says currently Clerk Slater and Trustee Kessel are on the Election Commission. The clerk's office must fill Trustee Lewis's vacancy, and Trustee McDonald has graciously agreed to serve in this capacity. Okay, so just right there, you just said you must fill Trustee Lewis's vacancy. Why do you need to fill that now if
Seconds.
in 2020, excuse me?
Supervisor asked me to give a 30-second warning.
Oh, that was nice. So in 2020, you didn't need Lewis there. So why is this other person important now?
Because Lewis's term went until November 20th, 2020.
Okay.
We didn't have an election this year, so.
So
for
a question
2022.
for you then, just a question.
Time is up.
Can you tell us on the day of election, are there rules in place as to which of the election commission or trustees need to be present?
They are not present on election day.
So there are no rules stating who has to
There
be
is a
present?
very thick manual on election law
Okay.
and rules and procedures.
Okay. So that's what we really need to look at.
You want the book?
No, we need somebody that can actually look at that to do an investigation.
Well, I would be happy to, talk with you on that separate from this meeting because it's
Okay.
pretty involved.
Okay, so one more question on the primary election that happened in, was it August? When did the primary happen?
August
August?
4th.
August.
So we understand that, so precinct 9, for some reason, all the other precincts were turned in to the county. The votes were turned in by 9:30, except precinct 9 didn't go until what time did it make it to the county?
I don't know. They could have had problems with the modem. I don't remember exactly, but we take it all to the county downtown.
What do you mean you take it? What do you take to the
We
county?
take the memory cards to the county under lock.
Okay, so you took them there by what? You
I
took-
don't remember what time. It was midnight. It was very late.
Well, I
when
think some
everyone
of them,
gets-
because they came across the TV, some of them were in by 9:30. So do you take all of them at the same time, or do you take different precincts at different times?
We take them all at the same time.
So why was precinct 9 not there until 2 AM?
I don't recall that. I don't
Okay.
know
well, can
exactly
we-
what you're referring to. I'd have to go back.
Yeah, could we please, I don't know how, Grace, I guess I have to ask you as a supervisor, how can we ask for, given that, how can we ask for an audit on that, just in Cascade, not countywide, but let's look at our local.
I will have to check the
Okay.
clerk, the treasurer, the supervisor, and the clerk's office. We're all on board, but largely,
Ms. Shea, your time's up.
Yeah, thank you. I have more
Separate.
questions on I have the letter from, but thank you.
thank you.
I didn't get your address, Ms. Shea.
I'm not in Cascade Township anymore.
We still need your address.
Well, any other comments? Virtual?
If any of our Zoom participants would like to make a comment, please raise your hand. Or if you're participating via phone, please dial *9 and we'll wait a few moments.
How did somebody who wasn't here to begin with, because they passed away on November 24th and they were sick for 2 years with Alzheimer's, why do they need to be graciously replaced? Because they weren't here to begin with. They weren't here. They had Alzheimer's, they were sick, and they died 4 days later. So you keep going back to the person doesn't need to be there on the day of the election. So what is Mr. McDonald replacing if the person wasn't here anyway for 2 years?
His term expired on November 20th.
Okay, and he wasn't here for by everybody's account who knows him, he wasn't here for 2 years before that.
He was in meetings last summer. And we had to replace that position for our election next year. We didn't have an election this year, so we didn't have to do it this year.
But it doesn't sound like he was capable of being here in sound mind and body anyway. So I guess I'm not understanding why he has to be filled in with somebody who's had integrity questions about his character. Why is that person just sliding into this role for a person who wasn't here anyway? It's a fair question. And I'm not trying to be hostile, but this is kind of getting laughable. Nobody can answer a question. It's just everything's good. And we should all just be okay with that. But really it's not. Because somebody's being slated into a spot that really wasn't vacant. It was vacant anyway. He wasn't here. That's all I have to say. It's a fair question.
Thank you.
Okay, do any of our Zoom participants, would you like to speak? It doesn't appear that anyone on Zoom has anything to say.
Okay. That will conclude this portion of public comment. Article 6, approval of consent agenda. Is there discussion or a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve. Support.
It's a motion by trustee Kessel, supported by trustee McDonald to approve the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Article 7. Oh, I'm sorry, trustee,
No, I'm good. I'd like to comment on Article 7 when the time comes.
Article 7, financial actions. Is there a discussion or a motion regarding financial actions? Trustee Northook.
I would have some discussion. I've been asking, without getting answers, the police millage fund, how it was transferred. Well, according to our financials, to fund blank or other fund, which is confusing me a little bit. But how dedicated millage money got used for our employee salary when it was intended per the ballot for 24-hour road patrol by the sheriff's department. I've asked whose idea it was to get that in the packet or in the budget. Nobody's answering, nobody's fessing up as to who that was. I keep hearing the board approved it. That's all you need to know. But it's true, but it was never explained. These are restricted funds for 24-hour police patrol that we now intend to use for a different purpose. If that would have been the vote, it wouldn't have passed. So I would like to see those funds put back in the police department. We've had plenty of issues with car break-ins. We've had plenty of issues at our hotels. I think that extra funds could go back to our road patrol. And some of our neighborhoods are having issues with car break-ins and petty stuff, but we need the police to be paid to do the job that we passed that millage to do and not be paying our employees wages. So anybody want to jump up and say it was their idea to steal the money from the police fund?
I will say it was my recommendation to the township board that that be used because the assistant township manager was responsible for administering the contract and doing the police related services. So I made that recommendation to the committee. I also made that very clear in all of my budget presentations as to that's how the money was being used.
What
It wasn't
portion?
clear.
What portion of the assistant manager's salary was paid from the police fund?
So right now it's set up as 50%.
And how much is that?
I believe, it's in the packet. I believe it's budgeted at, so it's the full cost of employment. I believe it was 48,000 or something like that.
I did send a copy of the ballot to everybody on the board, and that language is very, very clear that it's restricted and the purpose it's restricted for, and has nothing to do with administrative to the sheriff's department or going out and saying your grass is too long or your dog's barking, your fence is too tall. Has nothing to do with that. It was 24-hour road patrol. That's restricted funds, can't be used for salaries in-house. No matter how you want to dice it and slice it, that ballot made it very clear what it was to be used for. And we're not using it for that purpose.
I agree with trustee Nordhook on as far as the narrow language of the stated purpose. I think it's appropriate for the board to reevaluate the issue. I agree, we should use these funds, I think, for the actual millage, the millage dollars should be returned to the restricted police fund. We've got lots of residents who have been very vocal about speeding concerns, neighborhood patrols. And that's solely what they were presented with and what they voted for. So I don't want to go back and beat a dead horse as far as how we got there, but as far as moving forward, I would concur. Treasurer Pierce.
It's kind of a moot point now. We don't have an assistant township manager. I think we can take it up when we come up with a new organizational structure.
The issue would be putting those funds back into the restricted police fund, I guess, would be the only outstanding issue. Because the issue of wanting more patrols in neighborhoods and speeding has been on the table for a while without anything happening. We don't have to decide it tonight, but since it's being brought up. Manager Swayze?
I would just offer that you're absolutely correct. That's under the purview of the township board to decide that. I would take issue with the statement that that money was stolen or used illegally. That was run through our auditors. We also transfer money from our DDA to cover employee salaries. We transfer money from our infrastructure revolving fund to cover salaries. We transfer money from our pathways fund to cover salaries. So I would take issue with the fact that it was done illegally or stealing. But absolutely, I think that the township board every year should reevaluate whether that's an appropriate use of those transfer funds. And there's the ability to reverse it this year as well. So if the township board decided that they didn't want to use those funds that way, it can be done through a simple budget amendment.
Why don't we vote?
I would like to put those funds back in the police millage
Well,
fund.
that can come up at budget time, Jimmy. We
Okay.
don't make that decision now.
Was that require vote or just process wise, what's required?
We'd have to come back with a formal budget amendment for the township board. Typically budget amendments go through the personnel finance committee and then come to the township board for approval.
But what year would we be I mean, it's for past transfers.
You'd be able to do it for the 2021 budget that we're currently in. 2020 is over and audited at this point.
So that would require board vote? Or no,
Amendments,
or just overall approval of the budget?
the amendments are approved by the board by resolution. And there's still a set of budget amendments to come in front of the board for this year.
Okay.
Question, so are you saying that the millage for the pathway funds are going out to pay non-pathway fund stuff?
We have the amount of a full buildings and grounds employee is transferred out of the pathway fund into the general fund to cover the costs of a buildings and grounds employee.
It's fair.
And that's same with DDA, correct?
So DDA is half of the DDA/economic development director and one full buildings and grounds employee. The library fund is actually currently 1.5 buildings and grounds employees, but we're looking at for the 2022 budget, having a janitorial contract for the library instead of doing that through our own employees. The IRF is just a general administrative transfer to cover the administrative costs of the IRF fund,
What's IRF?
infrastructure revolving fund.
Any other comments, discussion topics?
I look forward to the budget meeting. I make a motion that we approve the financial actions based upon our communications this evening.
Support.
It's a motion by trustee Shipley, supported by trustee Kessel, to approve the financial actions. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Article 8, we have no unfinished business. Article 9, new business. Item 117, 2021. Amendment to inspection services agreement with Virgin Township to include building permits. Welcome, Director Wilson. Thank you.
Thank you. Didn't expect to be in front of the board again so soon. But just after the last time I was here, Virgin's Township contacted me. I actually met with them to expand our services with them to include building inspections. They're longtime building inspectors retiring. They've been a partner of ours since 2005. We started just doing plumbing for them. And then in 2013, we added electrical and mechanical. After the last action, they would be the last community remaining that's not full service, which is clearly our preferred model. That gives us the ability to create projects, monitor the progress of each job, and just facilitates the coordination between building and trade inspectors. They're a small volume. They do about 40 or 50 building permits a year. This equates to about 2.5% of what we do. So there's no additional staff required. Current staff can absorb this amount of work. So what that means is the permit revenue is expected to contribute about $40,000 yearly to our current operations. So the two main points that the board kind of gave some direction last time, as we look at the building department, how does it benefit the residents of Cascade? That's that contribution. We don't need to hire any additional staff. So the permit revenues will support our existing operation. And also it's important to consider that they're a long-standing partner since 2005. We're not talking about a new municipality. These are people that we've worked with for a long time. So the recommendation is to approve the expansion in Virgin's to include the building and execute the contract with those changes. Now, take any questions.
Well, Mr. Wilson, it sounds like actually by taking this step, it would smooth out the process for them also, and probably for your department as well, having it all underneath the one roof, so to speak.
Yes.
I would still like to see the residents of Cascade have lower fees and permits than everybody else, but we can talk about that later.
Fair enough.
I make a motion to approve the agreement with Virgin's Township.
Support.
It's a motion by trustee Shipley, supported by trustee McDonald, to approve the amendment to inspection services with Virgin Township. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item 118, 2021, special access warrant resolution for 2021. Is that you, Mr. Swayze?
I can cover this real quick. So this is a basic housekeeping item for our special assessment rolls for the 2021 tax roll. They'll be coming out shortly. Most of these you should be familiar with. There's new additions this year. Of course, the Laraway Lake SAD and the Thornapple River SAD that were both approved. We have an agreement through our water sewer master agreement with the city of Grand Rapids that any delinquent water sewer bills that remain unpaid after a certain amount of time are turned over to the township to be collected on the tax bills. We have two previously approved special assessment districts, the small Oak Terrace water extension and the 2017 Thornapple River Drive sewer extension. And then we have our streetlight special assessment district that we approve every year. So the special assessment rolls need to be warranted. And then they will appear on the tax bills that get mailed out to houses here in about 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Seeing as how none of this is new to us, I'd like to make a motion to go ahead and approve the warrant resolution for year 2021.
Support.
It's a motion by trustee Shipley, supported by trustee McDonald, to approve the special access warrant resolution for 2021. Clerk Slater, please call the roll.
Trustee Shipley,
Yes.
trustee McDonald,
Yes.
trustee Kessel,
Yes.
treasurer Pierce,
Yes.
trustee Nordhook,
Yes.
clerk Slater, yes, supervisor Lesperance.
Yes. Motion carried. Next, Article 10. Discussion topics. So these are not up for a vote or required any notice or board action. But there has been interest in the status of some staffing structure. I thought we could have a brief discussion, answer any questions that may come up.
Since I'm the author of that, I'd like to do a little presentation here. I still believe that we need to have a structure study of our staffing. And I still believe that we need to have part of that as a time study. Time studies can be fudged here. I'm talking, you're listening to somebody that's done that before. But I understand that a lot of the services that we traditionally have in the township are kind of falling behind because we've lost 2 players in the township office. I think that what we need to do more than anything else is have the township manager find a new assistant to the manager, not necessarily a assistant manager, but an assistant to the manager to pick up some of that slack. I've talked to Ben several times about having too many rocks in your backpack. Eventually, you're not going to be able to march forward. You're just going to collapse. So with that said, I'm sure that you probably have some good quality people from within, and promoting from within will frequently, if it's done properly, also be a benefit to morale, higher morale. So that's where I'd like to have you as a supervisor and you as a manager to find somebody there to carry some of those rocks and get some service back into the residents' domain. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions from the board?
I would agree with Mr. Shipley that Ben does need some support. And I would like to see that happen soon. He does have too much on his plate, and I keep throwing things on it for him too. But I'm opposed to a assistant township manager level hiree. I'm looking more for support staff on that position. And then I do think we need another position, and I'm not sure exactly how to name it, what it should be, but somebody to help in where Steve left, someone to help in where Ben's doing some of the work, someone to do some of the light engineering, some type of a general manager, I guess is what I'm trying to say, but you take it from there.
We've talked about that before. Ben has talked about the potential need for a engineering type person in the office. Somebody that can look at the small details instead of sending out a house, which costs us a lot of money every time we do. And I think that that is not quite as important as getting some help for him.
I agree.
And that's where I'm coming from. We can kick this can of organizational staffing / structure study down the road a little bit, but we can't keep kicking down the road the service to the residents.
I think the Manager Swayze and I have talked about this recently, and I know it came up at a personnel finance committee meeting. I think maybe infrastructure too. Support staff definitely needed, but I think there's an immediate and huge need for and this is nothing new at the board level discussion, but an engineering type project manager. We've got 2 top level, high paid vacancies, but we've got this, and we've had the need, even while Steve Peterson was here, there were lots of things that weren't being done that we don't need an outside engineering firm to handle, but that really need.
As far as I'm concerned, I'm not a personnel type person. That's something between Ben and you being the, what do they call you now, CEO of the township? That's between you 2 to decide.
Depends on who you ask.
What best is required.
I think we need to get moving on that, though. It's easy to kick the can. I don't want to, the emails that come in, questions to the supervisor, all would be quickly and efficiently addressed by an operations director with an engineering background. And that's not me. I think, I mean, let's just
Take
do
a
it.
couple rocks out of his backpack, that's all.
Yep.
Ben,
Thank you. So I'm glad to hear the conversation. I think a lot of ideas that you guys are putting out there are ideas that I have as well. As Supervisor Lesperance mentioned, we've had a couple conversations. I've been meeting with our HR, our now interim HR director, our now interim planning director, to talk about the visions for their departments. We've had meetings with all of our buildings and ground staff to talk about the leadership and the operations of their department, where things are deficient, where things can be improved. My plan is during our budget meeting to come up with, present a new organizational chart where somehow some of those new positions will be reallocated. I think we can position ourselves better based on some of the needs that are out there. I guess I would just caution that it's probably going to be a two-level process, right? Because we are short-staffed. Not only do we lose 2 high-level employees, we're short 2 mid-level employees right now as well. So how to fill those in. But we also have the big strategic plan out there as well. And I want to make sure that we're nimble enough that if something comes out of the strategic plan that moves us in the direction where we need additional staffing, we have the ability to do that as well. So my plan is to come to the board with an organizational structure that'll meet our current needs going into 2022. But my hope is that we can continue that conversation when the strategic plan is done to see if there's additional staffing that's needed to complete the goals that are in the strategic plan.
I would like to have the management consultant company come in and do the evaluations after we get the immediate needs taken care of on you. Let them come in and do a professional study and their recommendations as to where we need people and what the organizational chart would look like. That's never been done here to my knowledge. I think it's something we should do.
I know coming from corporate America at one time in my past, we always had an outside organization. Because if you had John Shipley do it, there'd be prejudice. If you had Timmy do it, there'd be prejudice. So bringing an outside organization is the right answer. When we get to that.
when we get there, I just think.
Correct.
I don't disagree with any of it. It's just right now the board and manager have just, there's some steps beforehand. Immediate gaps, in my opinion.
Okay.
We have great staff. I just want to say, there's a lot of uncertainty at the upper level board. And we've lost to Steve Peterson and then the assistant manager. But taking that aside, we're in great shape. And I think the staff has done the rest of the staff, remaining staff has done a fantastic job. So I hope that the way we word it isn't scary to them, because the issues that we're talking about are at the top level management, not to single anybody out, but the Steve Peterson issue and the need there. There's no complaints, at least from my end, from the great staff that we've got right now. I think you're doing great. Ms. Broad has single-handedly saved us as far as elections, passports, what else? Cemetery. So I just don't want the staff that we have right now to think that this is about them. Keep up the great work. Police millage, we kind of already discussed that, but would anyone else like to comment or?
I think there'll be a lot of comments and head scratching at the budget meeting.
And that budget session, Ben, do we have a date for that?
I'll circulate the potential dates to the board here on Friday, but I'm hoping that first week after Thanksgiving.
Okay.
It just so happens that Wednesday will slot in nice, but there's an opportunity to have it at an additional time if that works for most people.
Wednesday's fine.
Article 11, public comments. Please try to speak, or please try to stick within the 3 minutes, but at this point, go ahead.
I just like standing up straight and walking up to the podium.
Getting your steps in.
A couple of comments I would make from just hearing what I have heard tonight. We do not have the staff right now that can act as the champions for the residents and for the township of Cascade in managing cross-functional teams on projects. And we currently have several projects underway of significance. And I don't want us to be pulling defeat out of the jaws of victory, for example, in the PFAS area, from not effective communication, for example, which is beginning to happen just to a degree. Second, the millage replacement. I don't think the fact that the budget, that the audit was complete has any relevance to whether we can be reimbursed by, or the police millage can have money put into it by the township. It doesn't have to be reopening the old audit. It simply is a payment made today. And finally, I'd like to say that having raised questions in this capacity as a citizen several times before the board and getting no response to any of those questions leads some of us to be really irked at the Board of Trustees. It does not lead to the goal of transparency. It does not lead to the goal of trust. In fact, it leads to the opposing results.
Thank you.
Just as a follow-up to what Mr. Merlin shared, the same thing, I've been asking for things for questions for over a year. So I'm just going to I'm just going to be very specific. How do we, as citizens, and first of all, I want to make it clear that the 4-3 vote that put McDonald on the election commission, it was Kusel, Pierce, Slater,
was
and
the name.
McDonald. That it was the four of you that said yes and no. Mr. Nordhook, Grace Les Bronson, John Shipley said no. They spoke up for the citizens. So a question, just a simple question. Now that the citizens, now that we're aware, what can we do? Can we have a revote on that? And how do we do that? Because again, we don't know, but I promise you, there are so many people that would like to really revisit this. So how do we do, is that something that we can request? Or I'd like to request it. How about that?
It's been voted on and passed. It does not come up again.
It would be up to the the office who had that issue, which would be the clerk's office, and it would be up to the clerk's discretion on whether or not to revisit the issue.
It would. So then to that, I have the letter that came from the state election commission. And, Sue, I know you said that he was found, I don't know, not guilty, but that's not, because the letter is in the notes, it says that the department finds that the evidence submitted supports the conclusion that Mr. McDonald's actions constitute a potential violation of the MCFA. Specifically, the website and the mailers were both identified as being paid for by a non-existent committee. While Mr. McDonald attempted to correct the inaccuracy by conferring with the Kent County Elections Department, that was after he was reported, I understand, and filing an amended campaign statement, this correction does not mitigate the initial improper identification of election materials. So when you said that they found nothing wrong, that's not true. So I would like to leave it at that. And I think given that, the fact that you nominated McDonald, that brings up a question. You did state an untruth. So we need to look at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
You, Mr. Kessel, that said we voted on it and so it's final. Well, we the people voted on a millage for 24-hour sheriff funding. And so that should be final. If your vote is final, our vote should be final. And then money was taken out of what we voted on and used elsewhere. So I don't understand how the rules don't apply. They apply to us, or they apply with our money. It doesn't matter. The vote doesn't matter at all. But when you guys vote, that's just, it's final. I know I didn't vote for money to be reallocated.
I'm Molly Miller, 1490 Briarcliff again. And I have a little question with the same issue that Mr. Swayze was able to make the decision that we all had made the decision that the money should go to the police department to help all of us, all of the communities. And you took money from that fund, which legally, I don't think it's legal. And I would really have to check into your council to make sure that it was properly done. I doubt that it was, because when we vote to pass a millage, you can't just like play with that money and do whatever you want with it. And so that's something that's really concerning because you voted on it. And you cannot allocate money that is not there. It was there for the police. So I don't know whose salary it went to, but it shouldn't have. Because it just shouldn't have. And I think you know in your heart that it was wrong. So I would check legally into that one, for sure.
Any other comments in person? Virtually?
If any Zoom participant would like to speak during this public comment session, please raise your hand or dial *9 if you have a phone, and we'll wait a few moments. That's all, Supervisor Lesperance.
Thank you. That concludes this portion of the public comments. Next, Article 12, manager comments.
So I just want to cover a couple of things that are actually going on with other organizations right now, just to keep you guys in the public abreast. I'm going to pass this, if you could pass this down too. So the Kent County Road Commission is planning on hosting a public open house in this room on Wednesday, December 8th from 5:30 PM to 7:30 PM to review plans for the expansion of Cascade Road, 2 lanes to 3 lanes between 36th Street and Whitneyville. So if you can think about it right now, Cascade Road going south up to 36th Street is 3 lanes, and then it goes down to 2 lanes after you get past 36th Street. So the plan is to widen that to 3 lanes. They've got a set of preliminary plans done. So it's an opportunity for residents to come in and review those plans and see if there's anything that they have issue with. So this notice will actually be mailed out to everybody that lives within the project area. So they'll get the letter directly. And then we will work with the road commission to make sure it's up on our website and it's advertised on our social media and all that. So again, road commission meeting in this room, December 8th, 2021 from 5:30 PM to 7:30 PM in order to review the preliminary plans for Cascade Road between 36th Street and Whitneyville.
And that's where we just put a new pathway.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. And the pathway was designed knowing that that road was going to be expanded.
Of course.
A lot of people questioned why it was so far off the road to begin. Second item to talk about the Drain Commission. The Township Board did approve a petition to the Drain Commission back in August to consolidate the 5 drains that are in the Hidden Hills area. So again, just to recall, the Hidden Hills neighborhood had 5 different county drains, and they requested the township petition to turn that into one big drainage district in order to facilitate projects that go on down there. So that Board of Determination meeting was held in this room a couple weeks ago. The Board of Determination did determine to consolidate the drains. So they'll be going through that process. Now what they will do is take a look at that consolidated drain project to see if there is a potential for maintenance down there. If they do decide that happens, then they go through this whole process again, where they notify everybody, they put information out about the repairs out there, and then people can meet with the Drain Commission to determine the necessity of those. So kind of phase 1 is done, and then they move on to phase 2. And then if anybody was driving up and down 28th Street to get here today, you might have seen a ton of yellow and green flashing lights at the intersection of Craft and 28th Street. There is a sanitary sewer collapse at that intersection right now. As far as I know, it's not affecting anybody's service. They said they haven't had any reports of any backups. Actually, I'd be able to identify it through issues they were having with their lift station. But I would highly recommend it when you leave this meeting, if you're going west, you avoid that intersection. It'll be be cutting it open shortly.
Was that the gravity system or the force main?
I believe it's so there is a force main and a gravity main in that intersection. I believe it's the gravity main because it's a asbestos cement, which makes a mess when you try to replace it. So that's all.
Can you give us an update on, this is more for the public, but the residents who live in the PFAS contaminated neighborhood? And right now we've got the city has engineers out surveying. We got a lot of, or several questions from residents concerned about where we were at, what was going to, the loss of big trees, how much it affected landscape, how much of that was unavoidable, but how much of it could be avoidable, could be avoided. And a couple of them were pretty upset with kind of wondering where we're at in the process.
Yeah, so that process will follow a similar process I just talked about with the road commission and the Cascade Road. So, the city through the engineer that they selected, which is Precinct Newhoff, they'll get a physical survey of the area so that they can start to look at where the appropriate places for the water mains are and all of that. We'll end up having to have a series of town hall meetings in this building because there's 465 houses in the total project area, fewer than that in phase one, but I have to imagine that anybody that's in phase two is going to want to come to the first meeting anyway. So same thing, they'll have a big roll of plans. People can look at their house, where the expectation is to be. Precinct Newhoff has done water main installation projects all over the state. And I gotta imagine they have out-of-state offices too. So they're familiar with all the concerns that the residents brought up, and we forward those to them all the time. The project manager from Precinct Newhoff, Brian Vilmont, actually spent the good portion of his career as the Cascade Township engineer, and actually understands the expectations that come along with projects in our township. That restoration is usually a big issue, making things get put back the way they are. So that meeting will be forthcoming. I'm waiting for Precinct Newhoff to let us know that they have a preliminary set to share, and then we will get that scheduled as well and get all of those notices out to everybody.
Preliminary set of plans.
Survey plans.
Okay.
Yep.
So realistically, what would be the earliest for the first town hall meetings where people can come and ask direct questions to the engineer and probably the lawyer too?
Yep, I don't know, but I can make contact back with Brian and.
Perfect, because I know it's more of a communication to the residents. So the sooner we can get it. I know it takes time, but.
I have a question for Ben. These streets in this area where the new water mains are going in, are those streets up on our redo soon? Is that something we can incorporate into this project where we can get these out into the street because we're going to be redoing them anyway?
Yeah, so we've specifically held off on doing any street repairs in this neighborhood because we knew this infrastructure project was coming. There is an opportunity to incorporate that if they do decide to go on the street. The preferred space from both the city of Grand Rapids and the Kent County Road Commission is for the water mains to be in the green belt. But there is an opportunity for them to be in the road in certain areas as well.
I run over a lot of manhole covers, so
the sewer runs down the middle of the street, water main goes in the green belt. And the reason is because you eventually have to repair it. You'd rather not have to rip up your street in order to repair a water main break.
But there's discretion, right? This is not determined yet.
Yeah, there is definitely discretion. There's a huge right of way, 66-foot right of way. So there's an opportunity to, look at different areas. And then just like the pathway, sometimes we ask for private easements from homeowners to deviate the pathway out of the right of way if we're trying to avoid something. So there's an opportunity to want to go outside of the right of way to negotiate with homeowners. Water mains a little bit different than pathways. Pathway, you can kind of meander. Water mains kind of got to be in nice angles, and you got to be able to find it and identify if it needs to be fixed. It's a blank slate.
Great. We'll get the median set up as soon as we realistically can. That will help a lot of residents, I think. Board comments?
I got one.
Trustee Shipley?
As always, thanks for coming down, folks. I appreciate it. Welcome your feedback.
One other thing I got too. As you know, I sit on the strategic planning committee. And I asked this question last month. I asked it at the planning committee. Where the heck is Sable? Sable we hired several years ago to do PR for us. They have not contacted the strategic planning committee or attended any meetings. And I understand that they're also representing the Grand Rapids Airport. Now, seeing as how we've got a little potential conflict with them in the future, isn't that a conflict that they're representing them for PR as well as us for PR? I think that this board seriously needs to reevaluate that contract with Sable. All I have to say for tonight, more to come.
I would just note that Sable was at the last strategic plan meeting.
Who was there?
What's that?
Who was there from Sable?
Hunter. You missed it, sorry.
That was last Friday. So up to this.
Oh, I had December 3rd as the next meeting. Huh, how about that? Okay, I'm bad.
That was not intentional, sorry. Any other comments? Trustee McDonald?
Yeah, I'd just like to comment on my mentor and good friend, Jack Lewis. Jack used to sit in this seat during the board meetings. I sat in that seat for many years. So Jack would ask me a lot of questions almost every night before every board meeting. And Jack was my mentor on the planning commission, probably for several years. He was a great guy. And I used to talk frequently with his daughter, Susie. So if you're friends with the family, you would know Susie, and you can ask Susie about this. Susie invited me over to their home many times to talk with Jack, to see how Jack was doing. I used to give Jack rides to the infrastructure committee meetings. So Jack was very lucid in the board meetings. We did see at times where he was forgetting some things near the end, but for the most part, for his term, Jack absolutely understood what was going on, made good decisions. The things that he had to do in the elections commissions, which of course are done far in advance of the actual election, Jack was able to do. And if there was ever any issue with his potential health, Susie would call me and say, I think my dad's going to be okay, but here are some concerns. So although he may have been diagnosed with Alzheimer's for 2 years, Jack was actually very, very conscientious of things that were going on, as well as the board. And he was a great guy. And until late, probably in the summer of 2020, he even wanted to run again for the board, which was just before he passed away. And Susie and I talked with him and said, Jack, we really don't think you should do this again. You've served the township well. You've done a great job all these years. You don't need to put yourself through that. So he was even talking about it after the time for filing, because up until March and April, when he had to file, he wanted to run again. And we knew it was a stress on him. And I think he finally recognized it and didn't decide to run again. But he was a great guy. And I think we all loved and respected Jack. And I ran into Susie a little while ago. And, of course, she, with her husband, Wally, they also had a house on Lake Mitchell, which I used to have a house on Lake Mitchell. So I kind of had a bond with Wally and Susie because of that. But I just want to say Jack was a great guy. So if you knew him as family members, he was a good guy, but he was really a great contributor to the board up and probably until late summer of 2020, when then he really started to fail. So again, bless Jack where he's at now. I'm sure he's in a better spot.
When did Clerk Slater replace him on the planning commission? This was before my time. I just was thinking.
At the beginning of 2020.
So about a year before.
Yeah.
11 months or so before. Yeah. Why didn't he just stay until late summer?
I don't remember if his term expired.
I think his term had expired and he just said,
No.
He wanted to scale back.
Because you
No, because I
in-
filled that.
you filled in the remaining.
he just wanted to scale back. He wanted to scale back.
I make a motion for adjournment.
Support.
So motion by trustee Shipley, supported by trustee Nordhook to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you all for coming.
I forgot all about it.
but you wouldn't have known it. Right, no, of course not. A lot of people are diagnosed and they don't show it. No.
Hey, Craig, look, you were getting around good, man.
Thanks for letting me.
You look good rocking up there with the pendant.
No, I used to go over to him and Susan because Susan would call me.
Looks good.
I think my dad's not going to be good this week, or I think.
Sorry?
So it was fun. Chandler's team got
What are you talking
trounced.
about?
So they're still trying to, focus on.
Oh, well, he came on the next meeting. I mean,
Oh, so they're all.
so the night that I said that was the night that Rudy Giuliani was in Lansing and everyone was pretty fired up.
Oh, that sounds,
So
my gals.
I may have spoken out of turn.
Our two boys play at Wayland's. One son plays on Wayland's football team.
Lisa Lyons.
He's a freshman.
Yeah.
Bring him up.
We've-
every once in a while.
It's
And our other boy
fine.
plays soccer. How the guys do What, I guess the important thing is, I said, it's great to have fun.